All right. Hello, everybody. Making sure that I am live before 11:30 so that we can get started right away. I know sometimes it takes a second for YouTube to catch up with me, um, but I know it's still, so you're still going to hear everything I'm saying right now. I just want to make sure that YouTube is working before I really get started. There we go. Okay. And audio is good, so we're good to go. All right. So, today, well, sorry, yesterday was the 48th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. And so I want to make sure that we talk about that. I considered doing something yesterday, but I'd work and there were too many other things going on. So there wasn't going to be, I considered doing a special stream yesterday, but that didn't work out. So we're going to talk about this today. So 1973, you have Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton, which struck down dozens of state laws that were duly passed by state legislatures, signed into law by governors, consistent with state constitutions. There was no reason for the Supreme Court to strike down every single abortion law on the books all at once. Just straight up, there's no justification for that. And I could go on, and I've done videos before about why Roe v. Wade was such a bad decision, why it was so, like not even just from okay, abortion is bad perspective, like, yeah, we don't like abortion, we don't want abortion. Um, but even just from a legal perspective, from a constitutional perspective, there are so many things wrong with this. And even pro choice people have said that Roe v. Wade is badly written. So even people who want abortion to be legal and remain legal, they have, you know, criticized it because they recognize that the language in it is bad, the justifications are bad. And so they understand that it could theoretically be overturned on that basis. And they want, a lot of pro choice people, they want a better, so either Supreme Court decision or a law on the books or something to codify abortion differently, because they recognize it's a bad argument. It's a bad setup for if you want legalized abortion. And then, of course, we would like it to be overturned because we want states to be able to abolish abortion themselves like they did before. That was the thing, is before Roe v. Wade, it was up to the states, and some states had legalized abortion, and some states had it completely abolished, and some states had regulations. But Roe v. Wade just wiped everything off the map. Every regulation, every safety regulation, just wiped it all out and put these ridiculous tests and restrictions so that to make it really difficult for any state to pass significant abortion law. Even just health regulations and restrictions have been struck down in Texas and Louisiana and all over the place. We've had all these attempts just to regulate, health and safety regulations like you would for any other medical service, a medical procedure, and not to mention one that literally kills a child. So, you know, I want to kind of give the broad picture of where we're at now, 48 years later. What is happening? Where are we? And what is next? And I'm going to tie this in to Texit, which is the idea of Texas independence. And they do tie together. So because I think it's like, those are two different topics. I think they're gonna line up. So I'm gonna show you guys a website. It is linked in the description. I got lots of links in the description today. This one is numberofabortions.com. Numberofabortions.com. This is the abortion clock. It gives us kind of an idea of how many abortions approximately. See, and you get these very specific numbers here on the site, and you get the idea that that's it. That's the total number. These are estimates based off of data from previous years. We don't have any way to live in the moment know, okay, yeah, an abortion just happened. We don't have a way to do that. So this is based on, and they have the link to all their sources as far as Guttmacher and other, and Guttmacher is a pro-choice, pro-abortion organization. So it's like not like we're making up our own statistics or whatever. We're doing it based off of what the abortion industry itself is reporting. So number one, we know that these numbers could be low because of that, because the abortion industry tries to convince you it's not that big of a deal. That it's just, abortions are happening. And they try and tell you, the abortion rate's going down because of people using contraception, which is, we'll get to that in a second. But the other reason why these numbers aren't 100% accurate is there are several states that no longer report abortion numbers. And I believe California is one of them. And the states that don't report abortion numbers are some of the states that likely have the most abortions, but we don't have accurate data anymore because they stopped reporting. So that's the thing. If you live in one of those states, it's a good thing to look up. Does your state report abortion numbers, or are abortion facilities in your state required to report to the state how many abortions they perform? If they're not, that's something to bring up to your state legislatures. And even if you have like moderate or pro-choice state legislatures or legislators, state representatives, it might be worth asking them and saying, hey, we want accurate health data. Why are we requiring them to report how many abortion procedures they've done? We want to get accurate health data about the number of abortions, because a lot of kind of moderate, middle of the road pro-choice politicians will say things like, we don't like abortion, but and they're saying that less and less now, but there are still some who will kind of do this. Well, we want to reduce abortion by providing services, but we don't necessarily want to restrict it, and blah, blah, blah. Because they're trying to appeal to a broader voter base. And so if you have one of those legislators, or if you even have a pro-life representative, ask them, why does our state not require abortion facilities to report? Because we need those numbers. We need to see the data. Are abortions really going down, or is it just that we are no longer getting numbers from the states that have the most abortions going on? But anyway, we have, if you look at this, and I should have reloaded it right when I started this, but you look here, it says worldwide since you loaded this page. So when you load this page, it starts at 0, and it literally is telling you, like, since I loaded this page, which is really just a few minutes, it was like right before I started streaming, I refreshed it, and we're already at almost 1,000 worldwide. Because the U.S. is not the largest, we don't have the biggest abortion numbers. That countries like China, which again shouldn't surprise anybody, but they're definitely higher as far as actual abortion numbers. But we have U.S. today, we have U.S. this year, this is the most important one. United States since 1973, Roe versus Wade. So this is the important number you want to know, because 62,556,025. Because people, a lot of times we get a statistic in our head and we'll repeat the statistic over and over again. And I'd heard like people saying 50 million or whatever, however many million. And I'm like, no, we're at 62 million now. Like, we have to update this number because it goes up, right? It's not a static number. So 62 million, almost 63, right? 62.5 million since Roe v. Wade. And that real number is probably actually higher because, again, some of the states that commit the most abortions also don't report or don't require reporting. Some have optional reporting, which I don't understand why you would report if you didn't have to, but apparently some of them have it where some report, some don't. And there's just other breakdowns of the statistics, but I think this is worth being able to pull up just as far as saying, okay, here's what is happening, what the status of abortion in the United States and in the world is. Because if you look at worldwide this year, and we're already at 2 million, and it's January, right? We're almost at 2.5 million this year, and it's January. So, and I think I've seen statistics something like 40 plus million per year. In fact, I'm going to go down here because I think if I go to here, that's Life Matters TV, and they have this. I want to say they have, there we go. 42 million. They last reported in 2003. So we need better data from this. We need updated data, because I have no idea now if that, that's of 2003. That's a long time ago. Okay, it doesn't feel like it's that long ago, but it is. It's a long time ago. But it had gone down from 1995. So 1995, 2003, the worldwide abortion rate went down, but they had 42 million at that time. So we don't know. Maybe it's less, but I kind of doubt it. Especially since we now have new countries legalizing abortion that didn't have it legal before. But so I just reloaded the page and started over at 0, and there it is. It's counting up again, right? And that's worldwide. Worldwide today, US today. So US today, and this number is changing. So this is like, over the course of the day kind of thing, it's going to go up. But I give you these numbers not to overwhelm you or discourage you, but to remind you why this is still important and why we can't give up on this. And why it's so important for us to have all the resources and all the information and discuss with people and talk to people and say, here's why abortion is wrong. Here's what we're doing for women who need support in pregnancy. Here's what we're doing for women who want to choose adoption but need support. Here's what we're doing for women who want to parent. Okay. And I've talked about this before, but sometimes in the pro-life movement, we get a little over-focused on adoption. We get real like, well, they can just place them for adoption. They can, adoption's an option. And, and we kind of get all those slogans in our head. And adoption is wonderful and it's amazing. And it's been an amazing option for a lot of women who did not feel like they could raise their child, but wanted to provide them with a loving home. The problem is sometimes if we're not careful, and I'm not saying, it's like, this is just one of those things where if we're not careful, what can happen is we get so focused on promoting adoption that we end up using some of the same rhetoric that the pro-abortion people use, where we instead of telling a woman, yes, you can raise your child and we will help you, we tell them, well, if you can't raise your child, then just place them for adoption. And so rather than actually solving the root problem, which is her feeling like she can't do this, we just give her another out. And that doesn't necessarily solve the root problem. So we want to make sure that we are focusing on empowering women to choose life, whether that's through parenting or adoption, and offering adoption as an option for those who need it, but also saying, if you want to raise your child, if you want to parent, we will help you, and making sure they know those options are available. Another set of statistics. So this is, again, so some of these statistics on this page are from Guttmacher. Guttmacher used to be officially the research arm of Planned Parenthood. They are now technically independent, but they are basically the abortion lobby. They are the abortion research, whatever, and they're very pro-abortion, very, very, very pro-abortion. But that's why I like to use their statistics, because if I'm talking to a pro-choice person, they cannot argue with Guttmacher, right? You can't say we could say Guttmacher's biased, but a pro-choice person isn't going to use that argument, right? Because if anything, they're biased in favor of abortion, right? So if I can prove my point using Guttmacher, I will. So this is the link that I put in the description is this page. And it's a fact sheet updated September 2019. Of induced abortion in the United States. And you know that our statistics are always going to be a couple years behind. We're never going to have up to the minute, because it takes time for them to put together statistics and publish them. So September 2019 is the most recent we're going to really get. And so there's all of this, they said in 2017, 18% of pregnancies, excluding miscarriages. 18%. That's huge. In 2017, 18% of miscarriages. Now, I know it's been higher, but that's still insanely huge. You think about, it's almost 20%. Let's just take 20%. 1 out of 5. 1 out of every 5 pregnancies. 1 out of every 5 preborn children, excluding miscarriages. So we're not counting children who die of natural causes. We're saying 1 out of 5 preborn children are killed by abortion. Now, it used to be 1 out of 3 and 1 out of 4. So 1 out of 5 is better, but it's still just, if you think about that number, you take 5 children, right? 5 kindergartners, one of them's not there, right? One of them is missing. You get 5 little preschool desks, and one's empty. So just to put that in perspective, right? We need to understand what this is. And it's, talks about the abortion rate, and it's saying the abortion rate is going down. Now, again, I want to make sure that we understand that we have states that are not reporting. And so if we have states that are not reporting, we need to get those states to report. They need to report so that we can actually get accurate numbers, right? We want accurate numbers. And then, but interestingly down here, so it says who has abortions. They talk about 17% of abortion patients identify themselves as mainline Protestant, 13% as evangelical Protestant, 24% as Catholic, and 38% no religious affiliation, or, the 8% some other. 24% of people having abortions are Catholic. What's happening? What is this? What's going on? Right? What's going on with this? What are our pastors? What are, and then, mainline Protestant is a, very broad term. Like, I don't even know if I was given this survey, what I would, as a confessional Lutheran, I wouldn't call myself mainline Protestant. That wouldn't make sense. But, so I don't know, like, what would I say if they did that? So it's hard to kind of do that breakdown. And to say, like, oh, mainline Protestant versus evangelical versus Catholic. But the thing is, that's a significant percentage of abortion patients that are abortion clients that are Christian, right? And so we definitely need our pastors. And so it is worth talking to your pastor, and asking him to speak up. And I'm very thankful that I have a pastor who does speak up about abortion, does so frequently. It's a very important issue to him, and I'm very thankful for that. But there's a lot of pastors who are afraid to speak up because they are afraid that they're going to drive away somebody in their congregation who has had an abortion. But that's all the more reason you have to talk about it, because you have to offer, first of all, you can't offer the forgiveness, the gospel to somebody if you don't acknowledge their sin, right? Like, we have to acknowledge our sin before we can receive forgiveness for it. So if you're not acknowledging abortion, then how are you offering the gospel to that woman who has had an abortion? And also, what about the woman who's sitting in the pew, who's thinking about it, who is pregnant, who doesn't want to tell anybody, just wants her problem to go away? What is she hearing? And that doesn't mean we, do fire and brimstone. It means we do, hey, you have a community here that cares about you, that wants to help you. There's forgiveness if you've made mistakes. If you've sinned, they're like, we've all sinned, and therefore there is forgiveness for us. Like, not pushing somebody away, not shaming somebody, but offering. And so it's so important that pastors are speaking up and offering, preaching the forgiveness of sins, preaching the gospel to women who either are considering abortion or who have already had one. And then, interestingly, 59% of abortions were people who had already had one birth. So is somebody who had already given birth to a child. And so you do have those situations where women will have 2 or 3 children, and then, or even just one child, and then they'll say, well, I don't want any more. And that's another thing, is we need to start, make sure that we are supporting large families and encouraging, like, speaking positively about large families, and not doing this whole, like, oh man, that's so many children. And like, those comments that anybody who has a lot of kids or comes from a large family, you've heard them, is the like, oh, how that happens, right? And like, just kind of these disparaging comments about large families. I think large families are awesome. I know several, and they're great. Like, it's a good thing. And it's not just like pure chaos. It's not like, oh man, you're overrun or anything like that. Because that's the thing is I think there's this kind of stigma about having a large family where it's this like, ooh, something's wrong with you. You're something weird about you if you have more than 2.5, children. And so just, kind of normalizing that so that people don't feel like that's too many and that they can envision themselves having more children so that if they do get pregnant after they've had their 2.5, whatever, that they feel like they can still have another, But this is the most important one. In 2014, and I'm going to zoom in on this. In 2014, 51% of abortion patients were using a contraceptive method. 51% were using some kind of contraception. So when they tell me the contraception is going to get rid of abortion, I say no, because 51%, so technically the majority of abortion patients have access to contraception, right? They have it, they've used it. So telling me that more contraception is going to reduce abortion, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. So these are good statistics to bring up if you're talking to somebody, especially as we talk about how far we've come or how far we've gone with Roe v. Wade and all of that. So I just want to show you this. I want to make sure you have these resources. And then another thing that I want to share with you, again, talking about Roe v. Wade. And like I said before, it was badly decided. It's bad law. It's bad constitutional. It's not constitutional, right? It's poorly decided, poor arguments. Close that out. Abuse of discretion. The inside story of Roe versus Wade. You might be able to find this at your library, especially if you're trying not to support Amazon. I know I'm still linking Amazon because it's the easiest way to say, here's the book, here's where you go buy it. But if you can find it at your local bookstore, if you can find it at your local library, absolutely go for it. But it's Abuse of Discretion by Clark D. Forsyth. And it's it's a dense book a little bit, but it is definitely worth reading, even if you don't get through the whole thing. Just some of the initial stuff in the book is really, really eye-opening. So the book goes through how not only is the decision itself bad, but the way that the case, both Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, the way that those cases got to the Supreme Court was just a mess. So the quick version is, when the case was initially brought up, there were 2 vacancies on the Supreme Court that needed to be filled, and they were in the process of filling those vacancies. Nominations and hearings and all that, confirmations and all those things, all those processes. There were 2 vacancies, so there's only 7 members on the court. And the clerks were told, we need some easy, non-controversial cases to put forward so that we can do a couple of easy things while we're waiting for these confirmations. We don't want anything big. We don't want anything messy. Just a couple of little easy things. And some clerk, and the name is in the book, and I forget who it was, but some clerk picks up this Roe v. Wade case and goes, in the Doe v. Bolton case, and goes, oh, these are easy. These are just another application of whatever, some other decision. That's what they saw. They saw just, oh, we're just going to apply this other decision, nothing new, nothing whatever. So they brought it up, and they put it forward, and then the oral arguments happen, and the oral arguments were not great, and the court did not reference or didn't ask for any historical evidence or any medical or any they didn't ask for any evidence to be hey, what is the historical precedent? What does the medical community think about this? They didn't ask for any of that. And of course, and it goes also into how the lawyers for both Norma McCorvey, who was the Roe v. Wade, and I'm forgetting her name, but she was the woman from Doe v. Bolton. I want to say it was Sarah Weddington, but that might be one of the attorneys. You can correct me on that in the comments. I'm not going to Google it right now, but the attorneys for these 2 women used them, manipulated them. Especially Norma McCorvey, she didn't fully understand what her case was about. She never had an abortion, or was really trying to get one. That wasn't really the case. And, so they were looking for a case that they could use to legalize abortion, and they manipulated both of these women. It goes through all that kind of stuff. But then, so you have the oral arguments, and then the 2 vacancies are filled after the oral arguments are heard. So 2 of the justices never heard the oral arguments. So it was a mess. It was a messy case. It was a messy situation, and ended in a really bad decision that drove a huge political in our discourse as a country, and just really, I honestly think it was, I don't know if it was the cause of the polarization that we have today, but it was definitely made it worse if it didn't cause it. Just the intense polarization between those who saw this as a huge breach of the Constitution, a huge breach of states' rights, of the role of the Supreme Court, all of that, versus those who celebrated it, said, regardless of how we got here, and this is what we wanted. And so I think it's important for pro-life people to understand why Roe v. Wade was such a bad decision. So when we talk about overturning it or nullifying it, which I've talked about before, which I think is more likely is that we nullify it. If we talk about nullifying Roe v. Wade or overturning it, we need to understand why it's, be able to make the case for why it's a bad decision, and also be able to explain especially to pro-choice people or moderates, people who really don't want to get involved, that Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade's not some kind of middle of the road, case. It's, I couldn't find your live chat in the app. Weird. Oh, thank you, Evelyn. Yeah, I don't know why the live chat's not showing up on the app, but I'm glad you're able to get here. But yeah, so I want people to understand that Roe v. Wade is abortion extremism, right? It knocked out all of these state laws. It basically legalized abortion on a federal level up to the moment of birth, all 9 months of pregnancy, for any reason. Now, they provided in Roe v. Wade some ways that states could pass restrictions, but then Doe v. Bolton said, well, every restriction that a state passes has to have all these exceptions and all these loopholes, and those loopholes can be very easily widened, right, to fit just about any case. So they effectively neutralized any attempt to regulate abortion or ban abortion or restrict abortion in any way. So even the abortion restrictions we have now all have just gaping huge loopholes in them, which is just very frustrating. And some states that have 0 regulations whatsoever. They have late-term abortion, they have all this stuff. But it's just really, I think it's important that we understand that, we understand how we got here. And so, it's, we have to have our facts straight. Another comment from Evelyn. I'm very late to chime in, but I would not swear by those Guttmacher statistics coming from what we might call theologically sound churches. No, that's definitely true. A lot of, if we say like 24% of abortion patients are Catholic, yeah, they might say that they're Catholic. Are they really attending Mass every Sunday? And again, mainline Protestant, what does that mean? But I just think it's all the more important that we are speaking up and making that clear. A lot of people are like, oh, well, the abortion issue is divisive and we don't want to divide our congregation. But here's the thing. If you've got half your congregation supporting the killing of children and half of them don't, we need to have that discussion, because that's not something that's compatible. And I've heard it put really well recently by a few people, that when there's a severe theological difference within a congregation, within a church, within a synod, within a denomination, and if one branch has kind of gone off the deep end, you're not dividing church by pointing that out, right? They've divided, they've separated, they've gone off the deep end. You're just calling it out and trying to call them back and trying to call them to repentance so that we can be unified again. So I just think it's super important that we emphasize that, and make sure that we in our churches we are speaking up about this, because it's, I mean, we can't be silent. And so if you are a pro-life person and your pastor does not talk about abortion, you need to have that conversation with them. You know, he needs to understand why it's so important. And there's resources online, there's good stuff online for pastors, but just think about that, you know, keep that in mind. And also, as far as ways to get involved, because a lot of people, when I talk about abortion and Roe v. Wade and how bad things are, you know, it's like, okay, well, what do I do? How do I get involved? My go-to is always 40 Days for Life to get you started. If you've never been involved in pro-life work before, if you've only ever like gone to the March for Life and that's it, like that's all you've ever done, or maybe you've done a volunteer day here and there. If you've never been actively involved in the pro-life movement, start with 40 Days for Life. It's the best place to begin. It's very a low threshold, like kind of low barrier entry point, and you'll get connected to so many other organizations, and you'll start to see some of the other opportunities that are out there. But 40 Days for Life, this campaign starts February 17th, which is Ash Wednesday, if you are familiar with that. So it's during the season of Lent. So it goes from Ash Wednesday to Palm Sunday. So February 17th to March 28th. And you can find your local vigil, click there, and look at that. Not only do we have all of these in the United States, look at all these other countries, international, right? So even if you're watching this from whatever country, and if your country, your state, your city does not already have a vigil, you can start one. It's worth it. Please do. Also, results. Here we go. And I think I've got 40 Days for Life linked in the description. If I don't, 40daysforlife.com. It's easy URL. But here's the statistics from 40 Days for Life. That, as far as they know, 18,003 children, right? That number represents mothers who have come and told us, I chose life because of you. That does not count women who changed their mind and didn't tell anybody. That doesn't count the woman who had an appointment. She's driving up to the abortion facility. She sees the vigil. She has a change of heart right then and there because she sees all these people praying for her and just drives on. Right? It only counts the ones who came up and told us, I changed my mind. I am not having an abortion because of you. So then we know that the real number is higher because we know that there are women who turn away, who change their mind and don't tell us, because sometimes they tell us years later. So we know that there are women who've never told us. We can assume that. So the number is higher than that, but that's the number that they can verify. 211 abortion workers have quit their jobs. Abby Johnson runs And Then There Were None, which helps abortion workers leave the industry and find better jobs. So 211, and then 107 abortion centers, abortion facilities closed. So this is the thing, our 18,000 lives saved, that does not count however many lives have been saved by the abortion center being closed, right? If the abortion center is closed, fewer abortions are happening, right? If there's fewer abortion centers, there's fewer abortions. So if we know 18,000 women have said, I changed my mind because of you, and we've closed 107 abortion facilities, how many lives is that? So it's really worth doing. It's worth getting involved in. This is something that, honestly, if you've never been part of 40 Days for Life before, this is the year. This is the time. There is no better time to plug in and get started. All you're doing with 40 Days for Life is you're signing up for 1 hour a week. So let's say you can do Wednesdays at noon, or you can do Saturdays at 3 p.m., right? You pick an hour, and it's a weekly hour for the duration of 40 Days for Life. So starting on February 17th, ending on March 28th, each week during that time, at your hour, Thursday, Friday, whatever, 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 7 a.m., whatever it is that works for you, you pick that hour. And you go out to the abortion facility and you stand on the public right of way where you absolutely have the right to be there. right? You have every legal right to be there. Nobody can tell you that you're trespassing. You're on the public right of way. It may be the sidewalk. It may actually be the easement that's past the sidewalk, but before the property line. And you stand there and you pray. You spend 1 hour in prayer. And that prayer can be, if you have prayers that you are part of kind of like your daily prayers. There are lots of, depending on your denomination, there's lots of books of prayers out there. There are Catholics tend to pray the rosary. And it's, and you can also bring a devotional. If you have a devotional book that you use on a daily basis, bring it with you. Do your devotions out there on the sidewalk, right? Bring your Bible, whatever it is that you need, right? But you spend that hour in prayer, and that's it. Now, if you want to become a sidewalk advocate and you want to actually reach out to the women and talk to them, you can do that, but you have to go through training for that. But 40 Days for Life is the easy way to get started. Really low level of commitment. It's just 1 hour a week for a few weeks, and then you're done. Now, hopefully, at the end of that, you're saying, I want to do more, right? And a lot of local 40 Days for Life campaigns are associated with local pro-life organizations. Here in Central Texas, we have the Central Texas Coalition for Life, and they do outreach all year round. And so you can say, all right, I finished my 40 Days for Life, but I want to keep going. And they'll say, absolutely, here's how you can keep going. Here's how you can do more, right? Get you plugged in. But at the bare minimum, I want everybody who watches this video to sign up for an hour with 40 Days for Life. 1 hour. Now, you can do more than 1 hour if you really want to, if you've got the time. Don't burn yourself out, though. Now, let's say you sign up for your hour. All right, you're going to be in 40 Days for Life, but you really want to be able to reach out to the women who are going in there, and you want to be able to offer them alternatives. You want to actually be able to have that conversation with them and try to help them. I'm literally just going to pull this up right now. Sidewalk Advocates for Life, Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever you want to do. This is my account that's associated with this channel. It's not my personal one, so I just Google. It's fine. I use DuckDuckGo for personal use. But sidewalkadvocates.org, sidewalkadvocates.org, right? And so they have, they're saying they have 12,000 with sidewalk advocates because they're separate from 40 Days for Life. So 40 Days for Life is just within the campaigns, right? This is sidewalk advocates is year round all the time. And they can say that they have 12,000 women who said, yes, I'm choosing life because of you. So they have lots of information, but most importantly, they have training. So you go here, you find the location. You find the location that's closest to you. It doesn't have to, even if it's a little bit of a drive, you find the location that's closest to you, right? And if there's not a location, you contact them and say, I want the training, and they might be able to send somebody out to you or do something online. I don't know exactly what they would do, but let them know if you're like, I don't see a training near me. I want the training. Reach out to them. They'll help. But you get connected to a location, you do the training, you go out, and the nice thing about having a nearby location, oh, Evelyn's in Central Texas. That's awesome. So Evelyn, if you're in Central Texas, okay, actually Coalition for Life that I mentioned earlier is a Sidewalk Advocates for Life location. So we have Heather Gardner. She's the CEO, president, whatever her title is, of Central Texas Coalition for Life. And she also is the program director for this Sidewalk Advocates for Life location. So she does the trainings. She's awesome. I love her. You should totally sign up for 40 Days for Life and also consider coming to a training. But yeah, so the training is really amazing. I've actually been through it twice. I just went for a refresher just because. And it really prepares you to have these conversations in a really effective way and be as effective as possible. So if you're, so you find your location, you sign up, you get the training, and they will actually partner with you as somebody to go out with you to, to the sidewalk for your first, and you can shadow them. And so you can see a couple of times, see them sidewalk counselor, sidewalk advocate, do sidewalk advocacy. And you can get that, you can kind of get that training and experience there on the sidewalk before you actually reach out. So if you're kind of intimidated by that idea. But again, going back to 40 Days for Life, if nothing else, sign up for 40 Days for Life. Sign up for 1 hour, if nothing else. Okay? So I wanted to say all of that about, 48 years of abortion extremism through Roe v. Wade, and here's what we can do about it. Now, those are all things that anybody, no matter where you are, you can do these things. But we ought to also talk about, as much as we want to we want to pray to end abortion, we want to be there for women, we want to reach out to them. At the same time, we also are working towards abolishing abortion. And the thing is, realistically, with the way that the election went and the way that things are going right now, the chances of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade anytime soon are slim to none. We got, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Barrett. I don't think it's going to be enough. I think there's too much political polarization, political division. I don't think we're going to get the Supreme Court to overturn it. Now, I talked about this over the summer. I think it was over the summer, months ago, nullifying Roe v. Wade. So we need to nullify Roe v. Wade because the federal government will not get rid of it on its own. They will not. They have no reason to. They have no incentive right now to get rid of legalized abortion. The abortion lobby has so much money. The abortion industry, they're connected. There's too much corruption. There's too much connections here and there. There's no way that the federal government on its own is going to overturn abortion and ban it and make it illegal. Doesn't matter who you vote into Senate and House of Representatives. It doesn't matter who we put on the Supreme Court. It's not going to happen. Because even the constitutionalist Supreme Court originalist justices that are like, yeah, Constitution, they still say they won't overturn things like Roe v. Wade because they are super precedent. And anybody who says they will overturn Roe v. Wade is not going to get confirmed. So it's not a path forward, honestly. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of people, they've pinned all their hopes for abolishing abortion on the Supreme Court, and it's just not a good idea because that's not how it's going to happen. What we have to do is nullification. And this is where the states, pro-life states like Texas, like Missouri, right? Like Georgia, which is still pro-life. They're still conservative. Don't listen. Don't listen to the media on that one. They're still there. We still got them. Pro-life states have to step up and say enough. Say we are no longer going to abide by a bad court decision, wrongly decided, based on bad law, bad precedent, all of that. We're not going to do that anymore. Now, it takes us having courageous governors. So you need to be thinking about who your governor is and telling your governor, we need to reject Roe v. Wade. Now, if you live in California, this part's not going to apply to you as much because you're not going to get your governor. I'm so sorry. You're not going to get your governor to do this. And Evelyn says they're afraid of Biden packing the court. They are cowards too. Yeah. So that's the thing is the Democrats have promised to pack the court. They will. They will do it. There's no way that we're getting Supreme Court to do anything useful anytime soon. It's just a reality. But what pro-life states like Texas and other states like that can do and can say they can say we're not going to cooperate with you anymore. We're going to resist. We're going to reject bad constitutional decision, like unconstitutional Supreme Court decisions. And we can even take it a step further because, we have the abortion issue. The abortion issue is a big deal. We need to get rid of it. But there's so many ways that the federal government has trampled on the ability of states to make their decisions. Yeah, and Christina says, feel the same way for Washington State. Yeah, we got as corrupt as California, unfortunately. Yeah, it's real sad. I used to live in Washington. It's real sad. It's, and Oregon at least, and Washington and Oregon both still have their conservative factions, there. They have their conservative areas, but it's just that whole West Coast is just going so bad. It's not going to be good, right? So this part is going to be a little harder for y'all to do. There's still stuff you guys can do, but to for states like Texas, when we look at all the things that the federal government is doing to that are just trampling on states' rights, trampling on our Constitution, there's something else that we can do to put a little extra pressure on the federal government. And maybe even just say, we don't need them anymore. This is #Texit, aka the Texas Nationalist Movement, aka the Movement for Texas Independence. Now, I want to really make sure I'm clear right up front. It says Texas Nationalist Movement. Texas Nationalist Movement just means the movement to make Texas a nation. Okay? So don't get that confused. Don't get that confused with something else. This is the movement to make Texas its own nation. It has nothing to do with any other nationalist, anything else, okay? #Texit, like Brexit, but with Texas. This is the idea of Texas, stepping up and saying, we are no longer going to participate in a corrupt system that doesn't allow us to protect our most vulnerable citizens, that doesn't allow us to do things the way Texas needs to do them, that tramples on our rights, that can't conduct free and fair elections. This is the time for Texas to say enough. And now I got the chance to listen to a webinar / town hall thing from the organizers of TNM and Representative Kyle Biederman, who is introducing legislation this coming week to have a referendum on Texas independence. So the idea behind this referendum is that if it passed in the Texas legislature, what we would do is, first of all, the government of Texas would have to basically publish, here's our financials, here's where we're at, here's what it would look like for us to leave. So one of the benefits of that, even if you're not keen on the idea of Texas independence, it would hold them accountable for how they're spending our taxpayer dollars and how much of our money is going to the federal government, and taking a good long look at that. Like, how much money are we giving to the federal government, and what are they doing with it? And do we need to give them that much money? But then it would also create a referendum where the citizens can vote directly, stay or go. Stay in the United States with all the corruption, with all the nonsense, or go and be an independent Texas. And I have some people who are like, well, I'm American first, and I can't leave the USA. The thing is, what is it exactly that you love about the USA? If you love the flag and chanting USA, USA, and the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem, if you love all the pageantry, that's not the same as loving the USA. America is not a flag or a song or a chant. It's not even a government. The idea of America was limited government, limited by Constitution, freedom, peaceful transition of power. I don't call 25,000 National Guard troops locking down D.C. a peaceful transition. Sorry, even if nothing happened, if you have to put 25,000 troops in D.C. to lock the whole thing down, put up checkpoints, papers, please, if you want to go in, that's not a peaceful transition of power. Sorry. We have lost our identity. We have our flag, we have our song, but we have lost what actually makes us America. So what Texas is saying is, let's take that back. Let's regain that. Yeah, and everyone says, people will say this is a pipe dream. Tucker Carlson said it was impossible after the Civil War. How can we believe the federal government will allow a state to secede? So, and there's all those kind of objections. But the thing is, it's a pipe dream until you get enough people to say, yes, we want to do this. Right? If everybody goes, it's a fringe thing, it's a whatever, it's going to stay that way. But if we start taking it seriously and actually talking to our friends and family about it, It can happen. And the federal government is not going to like the idea. The question is, will they be willing to send troops to Texas to crush us or whatever? Probably not, especially since Texas is pretty well prepared to fight back. And the way that this is set up is a little bit different from what the South was doing. Okay, the South, we don't want to compare this to the Civil War and the Confederacy. This is not the same idea. This is closer to what happened with Brexit. And that's what I want you to think about. When you think about Texit, think about Brexit. There was no war. There was years of negotiation. And so it kind of felt a little anticlimactic. It was like they voted for Brexit and they're like, yay, Brexit. And then what? Right? And then it was years. But they finally have left. Right? It took years of negotiation and deals to deal with, like, trade deals and how are we still going to interact and passports and all those sorts of things. But they did it. And so that's what we're going for with this. This is not revolution, right? This is not, Civil War Part 2. This is Texit. This is we vote as the people. We give the people the chance to vote. That's the first step. We give the people the chance to vote. The opportunity to say yes or no. And if the thing is, if we put a referendum out and everybody votes stay, then we stay. But we've given the people a voice. We've given the people the chance. And if they vote leave, then we start the conversation with the federal government. We start the negotiations. And maybe, just maybe, depending on how things go, you get enough concessions from the federal government because they don't want a war and they don't want us to leave. You get enough concessions that we say, all right, you know what, now it's worth staying. We can work with this. We can negotiate. Maybe it's not perfect, but we can come back and we can say, all right, let's figure this out. But if not, at the very least, putting this on a referendum, letting people vote, will encourage other states, other conservative states, to say, yeah, you know what, maybe we don't want to be part of it either. And if we get a coalition together, it could be a very different picture. So the EU was never, Seven says, I feel there's a key difference in which the EU was never one nation while the US is one nation. The thing is, the US was always supposed to be what the EU, the US was supposed to be United States, right? Individual states united under a constitution. The Civil War is what made it into we're now this one country with provinces, which is kind of what it feels like now. The EU is actually closer to what the US was intended to be. Of course, the EU is all socialist and stuff, but as far as the idea of independent members of a union, that was what the US was set up to be back in 1789, right, under the original Constitution, before we messed it all up. So that's why I want to compare it to Brexit, because I want to say that we should start thinking of the states more like members of a union who can leave. And again, so much of it is perception, right? And it's only impossible if we all believe it's impossible. But if you get enough people to say, you know what, we can do this, this is possible, let's see what can happen, right? Let's push for it. If it doesn't happen, all right, we tried. But let's see, right? What's the harm, right? What's the harm in being transparent with our budget, getting transparency, being able to see the details of our budget, how much money we're giving to the federal government. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, let's reduce how involved we are with the federal government. Maybe it's a gradual thing. We reduce how much money we give them. Governor Abbott has already said, next time they call for National Guard troops, we're not sending them because of how the National Guard was treated, being told to go sleep in a parking garage, right? He said, next time we're not sending them. That's step one, right? If we say we're not going to send our National Guard for the common defense, that's already kind of a step out, right? And if we stop sending them the federal government money, that's another step. Maybe it's something where we gradually disentangle ourselves. Texas has its own power grid. If you didn't know that, Texas has its own grid. There's an east grid, a west grid, and a Texas grid. We can actually disconnect from the U.S. They can't shut off our power. So I'm just saying, maybe this is a gradual process. Maybe it's just as simple as let's get the numbers. What are the numbers? And then let's get a referendum and let's see how people vote. And this is the thing to say to your representatives, your elected officials. What is the harm of giving the people a chance to vote, of listening to what the people have to say? And you know what the harm is to them. They don't want this, right? They don't want to hear what the people have to say. But you need to get them on record with this. We need to get people on record. And so I'm talking about this, and, you know, the Texas Nationalist Movement, TNM.me, they have a lot of good information about how this works. So that's actually really important before I kind of go into anything else. So there's, I think it's the About page, but there's a lot of good stuff here about how this works, right? And how this can happen. So that, you know, you really can, here we go, text it. There it is. So you go to this tnm.me/text it, and they have answers for all the questions, right? You can type your question in the box, and they've answered everything. Everything you can think of. How would this work? Is this possible? Is it legal? Is it constitutional? Everything you can think of is on this website. Right, I was watching the online town hall, and people were asking questions in the town hall, and they said, well, that's on the website. That's on the website. It's all on the website. So please do check it out. If you're in Texas, check this out. Think about, contacting representatives. Evelyn says, I'm intrigued, but I believe the feds would fight Texas for economic reasons. Big economy and domestic oil reserves are in Texas. We incentive enough to keep it. Right. And so I'm not saying it'd be easy. But I think it's worth pursuing, and I think at the very least, it could bring the federal government to the table to negotiate. And I think that would be very powerful. If we kind of have those chips, if we kind of have those cards to play, we're saying, hey, we might leave, and we're willing to actually do it. That's a powerful negotiating stance, right? We can make some serious changes. Again, I don't think the United States wants another civil war. I think in some ways we may be headed towards one. But this is, I think, the most peaceful resolution. If we say we want to peacefully separate, I think that's the most peaceful solution, because otherwise I don't see how we're resolving all these political tensions, all this polarization. I don't see this resolving peacefully unless we say, hey, we are going to peacefully separate. So I think this is our best chance at a peaceful resolution. So Evelyn, definitely check it out, especially since I know you're in Texas. So check it out, read about it. And consider contacting your state reps, your state senator, your state rep, and asking them to support the legislation, to sign on to it, not just to say, oh, I'll vote for it maybe, but to actually sign on to it. I know mine won't, but I'm just going to pester them anyway, because I might as well. Like, if they're going to be difficult, I might as well just, pester them and make things difficult for them. But I'm going to be annoying. I'm not going to let them ignore me, even if they're going to not vote the way I want them to. I'm at least going to be annoying about it. But for those of you who are not in Texas, this is the big thing, because as soon as I started talking about this on my Tumblr, people started messaging me and saying, man, it would be really awesome if Texas seceded. I live in fill in the blank state here. Or even I had somebody from the UK who messaged me. I would totally move to Texas if you guys secede. My answer to that is, I understand not everybody who has that idea can just pick up and move. But if you're serious, if you're really serious and you're like, man, I really want to see Texas secede, I really want to see an independent Texas, I think that would be awesome, and I would totally move there if it happened. If you're serious about that, I want you to seriously consider moving here now. And I know it's funny for me to say this because there's this whole thing about Texans saying nobody else needs to move here because we have all these Californians coming in and changing policies and all of that. But if you're of the mindset of, I think Texas should be independent, we want you here. We want you to move here. Move here now. Right? Now, I will say, try to move to a small town. The big cities are a little weird right now. Move to a small town or a smaller city if you can. But if you're really, really serious and you're like, I really would love to live in an independent Texas, you got to come get here now and help us get there. Because here's the thing, is our legislature only meets every other year. So they're in session right now. They won't be in session in 2022, and we'll have to wait till 2023
in order to try this again if it doesn't work this time. So if it doesn't work this time, that means we've got 2 years to reorganize and kind of get the ball rolling again. But this is really the time where I want people to take this seriously. And even if we don't succeed, I want us to try, because even just trying, even just the idea that there's a significant number of people behind this, we're putting pressure on the federal government. And to bring this back around to my thing about nullification and abortion and abolishing abortion, one of the things that was really, really cool on the webinar that I listened to was that they talked about how if we became independent Texas, we could abolish abortion, right? One way to nullify Roe v. Wade is to simply say we no longer subscribe to the federal government. We're going to make our own decisions. And that's part of when we talk about seceding, it's not, or, independent Texas, it's not like Texas is going to get up and move anywhere, right? We're not getting up and leaving. Leaving the U.S. doesn't mean we actually move anywhere. It just literally means we stop cooperating with a corrupt federal government. And that can be a gradual process. That can be, again, like I said, not participating with our troops, with our National Guard, not giving the federal government resources, saying we're not going to enforce federal law or federal policy that is inconsistent with the Texas Constitution, saying we're going to ignore federal court decisions that go against our duly passed state laws and our Texas Constitution. If we start doing those things and pushing back, we're leaving. That's leaving. Now, I think we should have a referendum, let the people vote, say, yes, we want to leave, and do it intentionally. But there's also ways to just kind of gradually pull back. And other states can do this too. So if you're in another state that's a red state, that's a conservative state, especially if you're in a state that's consistently, that both in 2016 and 2020 voted for Trump, there may be some support in your state for this idea. Again, talk to your legislatures, but also talk to your friends and family members and see, is there a coalition for this? Is there support for this? What if we got several states at the same time to say we want to leave? That would really pull the federal government to the negotiating table, right? If we had a coalition that could come to the table and negotiate, might get some traction, or might end up forming our own coalition, our own, whether it's necessarily a new nation, but even just a coalition, something more like the EU, in the sense of we get 3 or 4 or 5 states. We all say we're going to leave, and we all work together to support each other. So I wanted to throw that out there, but to me, this seems like the most realistic way. And I know it seems crazy, but I look at this as the most realistic way to peacefully resolve the insane political strife in America without a civil war, potentially. Like this is to me the last chance to avoid either a civil war or a full-on dictatorship, one-party system, one-party rule dictatorship, because that's where we're headed. Economic collapse, tyranny, all of that stuff. That's the direction we're headed, and this seems to be the most peaceful alternative, peaceful way to resolve this. And to be able to do things like abolish abortion, for goodness sake, like this is Texas, and we still have state money going to Planned Parenthood. We have not fully defunded Planned Parenthood. We partially defunded them, but goodness gracious, like we need to get our act together. So, to me, this is a really huge opportunity, because I think there's more support now than there ever has been, especially with what happened with the election and all of the stuff and all the stuff that Biden's administration is already doing. They're already reversing the Mexico City policy, and they're going to go after the Hyde Amendment, and they're going to go after all this stuff. This is our opportunity to say, you know what? We're not putting up with this. We're not going down that road with you. We're going to go our own path. So I think it's worth pursuing. I think it's worth learning more about, if nothing else. Yeah, so, and Evelyn says for some, even if Texas left, the rest of the country would still suffer. But my point is, if Texas left, or if Texas even was seriously considering leaving, I think it would empower other states to do the same. And it would make other states realize that they do have the power to push back. I think there's a lot of states that would push back, but somebody's got to do it first. Somebody's got to be the first one to step out and say, hey, enough's enough. I think other states will follow. You're never going to get everybody. And actually, this is part of my problem with this whole idea, like, oh, we got to save our republic. I honestly think that California and Texas and Pennsylvania. Oh, there's an echo. Oh, thank you for telling me that there's an echo. Let me. Oh my goodness. Thank you for telling me. I'm going to.
Hopefully that will fix it. My goodness. Okay, that should be better. Thank you for telling me. Oh, it's sometimes when I share my screen, it like tries to also take audio from the computer. It's really annoying, and sometimes I don't get that toggled correctly. So thank you for telling me. All right, hopefully that's better. Woo-wee. All right. Yep, it does not have to be like that. There we go. Thank you so much. Okay. Man, how long was I talking with that sound messed up? Goodness gracious. Okay. Anyway, fun story there. So my point is, all that to say, this is possible, and I think Texas can lead the way. Oh yeah, what I was gonna say is, I honestly at this point I don't think that California and Texas and New York and Michigan and North Dakota and all of these states cannot share the same federal government. At least not one that is so overbearing where you have to win control of the government and control the whole country. Like, that's not realistic. And that's how we've gotten to the point where that's why we're so polarized. Because every 4 years we have to fight each other over control of the entire country. What if instead we kind of all stepped back a little bit and said, maybe we don't all need to do the exact same thing? Maybe California can make California decisions, and if California wrecks itself, that's on them. And, and maybe if they stopped getting subsidized by the federal government, they would have to get their act together. Just saying. So the idea being that maybe we don't need to have all 50 states sharing one federal government when we are so culturally, politically, ridiculously divided. Yeah. And so that's the thing is, when we have Biden, and Biden's, and not just Biden, it's not Biden. He doesn't know what's going on. But when we have so many, so much going on in the federal government, so much corruption, so much control, to say, oh, Biden will reap what he sows. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, I don't think it's not Biden. He's a figurehead, and he's not even a really good figurehead. Right? He's not the one making these decisions. He's not writing these executive orders. He's signing them, I guess. That's it, right? So when we have this top-down control over the whole country, the only solution for this is for all the states to say, you know what, we do not all have to be on the same page. We do not all have to share the same government. Unity is not achievable when we are so politically and culturally divided. And so we have to step back. We have to say, you know what, maybe the West Coast does their thing. And I'm sorry to those of y'all who are on the West Coast. It might be time to leave. I'm just saying. And that may be that what needs to happen is it may need to look like, all right, if you want, kind of conservative values and all that, you come to Texas or you come to other states like that, and we separate, right? So if you support the idea of Texas, if you want Texas to secede and be its own nation and other states to follow, come on over, help us do it, right? If you can. I know not everybody can. I know it's not realistic for everybody, but we need you. We need your help if we're going to do this, right? So if you're sitting on the sidelines going, yeah, I'll get in the game after you win. If you can, come now. Help us do it. Like, I became a member of the TNM just a couple of days ago. I paid my annual membership fee, and I'm signing up as a volunteer. I said I'm willing to make phone calls. I'm willing to knock on doors. Like, that's what it's going to take. There's going to be effort that is involved in it. So yeah, Ohio. Hey, there you go. Right. So you got to think about, like, if you're in one of these states like California that's just a lost cause, honestly, at this point, you really need to think about heading over to somewhere like Texas or maybe Ohio or some of these other places that could, like Texas, because we could actually secede, or even some of these states that are like swing states that could flip. right? But we need to start thinking like that, because the Democrats have been doing it, right? The Democrats have been sending people from California to Texas. Like, people have been moving from California with the intention of flipping Texas. Like, it's not even just accidental. Like, I've seen people actually state that their intention with moving to Texas, they moved to Texas with the intention that they wanted to flip it. So this is where we have to start, you know, making this decision deliberately. We have to be deliberate on this. So I wanted to just kind of throw this out to you guys, give you this, you know, this information, these resources, these links. Check out TNM for your questions and all of that stuff. Yeah, people are leaving California in droves, and it's time. It's time to leave. Get out of there before it's too late, right? If you're in one of these states, New York, California, even Washington and Oregon, honestly, it's not worth it. Get out. Come to Texas. Help us get independence. Help us do Texit. But also, again, to wrap back around to it, regardless of where you live, go sign up for 40 Days for Life. I do actually have to kind of end the stream. I know because I had to start the stream early today. I normally start at 12:30. I started 11:30 today because I am going to the Texas Rally for Life. So I will be heading out in a little bit for that. And so Evelyn says, I struggle with this because I know on political grounds you're right, but on spiritual grounds, I can't see Washington as a lost cause. I love the state and the people there. I know. And you know what? Maybe it's one of those things where they have to crash. They kind of have to hit rock bottom before they can get back on track. And maybe there's a chance for Washington. Maybe Washington's not a total lost cause, but I honestly think I don't know. I don't know if it's doable. Maybe it is. But yeah, definitely Maryland is a lost cause. Massachusetts is a lost cause. But yeah, and I get it. I get being like, you know what? I love the state. I love the people. And I love Washington. I lived there for 5.5 years, and it's a beautiful state. It's a beautiful place. I miss it. I love it, but I wouldn't live there now. I wouldn't move there now. Oh, yeah. See, there we go. So there you go, Evelyn. If Washington splits into two states, right, presumably right along the mountains there, I would assume that would be the idea. So if Washington split into two states, that would be doable. I could see that. That would be worth staying and fighting for. But otherwise, get out. But yeah, so come on to Texas. Come on over. And see, Kyler's My Angel says Butler County, Ohio, March for Life is tomorrow at 2 p.m. That's awesome. Yeah, our Rally for Life is today. We're going to get, so I'm going to head out there in a little bit here. Christina says, outside of King County, Seattle, Washington can be pretty conservative. Yeah, especially Eastern Washington is a very different story. And so I could totally see a split. That would be, I could see that happening. That would be worth fighting for. So that's awesome. Yeah, but start thinking along these lines, right? We got to start thinking about this kind of stuff. Just simply voting for the same people over and over again is not enough. We got to start pushing for these innovative solutions. How do we actually make legitimate change? So thank you guys for tuning in. And I want to thank everybody who came to the chat today. I love when y'all are here and we can have this back and forth. We can have these interactions. And especially if you can come tell me that my audio is messed up, because otherwise, I can't constantly listen to myself because it's too distracting. So I hear myself in the beginning and make sure the audio is working, and then I turn it off, and then the audio gets messed up. So thank you for telling me that. And thank y'all for being here. Great interaction. Great, had a great time talking to y'all today. I will be on next week, next Saturday, at 12:30 Central Time, my normal time. And I don't know what we're talking about yet, but we'll talk about something great. Yeah, stay in prayer, absolutely. Sign up for 40 Days for Life. Look into Texit, and I'll see y'all next week.